This is a quick walkthrough setting up a workspace for working with the GitHub API using their OpenAPI definition, and then using it to generate collections for documentation, mock servers, and other purposes. So I've got a workspace set up here. I don't have any APIs or collections in it yet, but I'm going to create a new API. I'm going to call this GitHub, I believe we're version 3, OpenAPI and YAML. Let's go ahead and find our file. What do we got here? GitHub OpenAPI. Let's create the API. So it's going to import. There we go. Now we should have an OpenAPI here defined, and we got a YAML document with our OpenAPI definition. I'm going to go ahead and hit collection. I'm going to call this reference docs. And the purpose is documentation, and I'm going to go ahead and hit generate collection. It might take a little bit here because I believe the OpenAPI is pretty robust. But what we're doing is we're using the OpenAPI's essential truth of what the API does, and then we're going to generate specific collections for various stops along the API lifecycle. So for the purposes of this workspace, I'm just setting up reference documentation, and then I'm going to set up a mock collection so that I can mock the entire API. And because the OpenAPI is JSON schema, there will be examples for each of those requests in the API, and so I should be able to work with it. It's not going to be live or very high quality sample data, but it should give me enough to be able to work with it and in a workspace without actually making calls to the API. So I've got my API here. I should have a collection here shortly once it finishes syncing, generated with all of the endpoints that are available in this OpenAPI. I'm going to go ahead and get a second collection going here. I'm going to call this reference mock. This is going to be specifically for my mock server. And it doesn't have an environment, but I'm going to say save the mock URL as an environment variable. It'll create the environment at that time. I'm not going to say this is a key because I want to be able to make some calls to it right away, but I will be locking this down so that it requires an API key to use. So I'm going to go ahead and create this mock collection. And so the reason I'm having two separate collections, the OpenAPI is the truth. I'm generating one for docs. I'm generating a second one for mocks, because then I can have examples and details, descriptions of each of the API requests for different purposes. So if I want one to, examples that are specifically for the documentation, those are in the doc collection. And then I can use Postman to help me keep those in sync. All right, so should have my new collection here. I generated the mock server. I've got the mock URL there. It should be in an environment called reference mock. Let's see if it's called URL. So let's see what our collection isn't here yet. So here's our docs collection. We've got all of the paths, the endpoints, and I can actually then say publish this as docs. It's going to load up in here in a new window. I can choose my environment if I wanted to publish from it. I can add a custom domain, some styling, and then I can choose to add it to the API network. I'm not going to because I just want to share this URL privately with people, but I'm going to go ahead and hit publish collection. And I've got this URL here that I can send to folks. And I got basically my own private GitHub documentation that I can keep internal, use as part of teams, and needs a little cleanup because the folders don't have many descriptions, but the API endpoints themselves are pretty robust. It's got lots of examples because there's JSON schema in the OpenAPI, and it's a pretty robust set of documentation. The best part is it's got a run in Postman button, which GitHub Docs do not currently. So you can actually go and start using that in your own workspace, or your partners and consumers can. So I've got that published as docs. I've got this one as a mock collection, and if either of these should work. Let's see, get authenticated app, what's my base URL? So it's still pulling from the variables. I'm going to change this to use my reference mock. I'm going to call that base URL. And I'm going to save, got my environment, and let's see what we get. Might take a little bit to set up the mock server, but there you go. We got an actual response from our mock server. It's just empty dummy data, there's nothing in it, but the structure is valid per the JSON schema for the OpenAPI. So I basically have a mock server and documentation in a workspace that I can share with people, all driven from an OpenAPI. Now, if this was GitHub doing this, they could also choose to sync this with their GitHub repository, or if you're using this as part of your own development workflow, you can connect it to your own GitHub repository, sync this OpenAPI, as well as use it for documentation and mocking. That provides a quick little walkthrough of how you can use the GitHub OpenAPI to manage, to create different workspaces for your teams to use.